Hi, this is Tamsen Granger.
This is Dan Abuhoff.
With Tamsen and Dan Read the Paper. It's May, the lusty month of May.
Yeah.
May 3rd, Sunday, 2020.
It's a nice day. How about that?
It's a sunny day. Well,
and warm. It's sunny right now.
Okay, it's sunny now.
And it's like the mid-70s.
Yeah, it's delightful.
Don't knock it.
Yes.
We haven't had it for a while. We're not going to have it again for a while. But
really?
Yeah.
Always the optimist.
Well, it's the way it is. But yesterday was nice, too. And I think it's going to be all right this week. The weather can only improve.
But now we're giving weather reports.
People want to know the weather from a few days ago. It's uncovered territory.
All right, tune in here.
All right.
And get something not very current.
Not very current. Well, in any event, yeah. So here's something we've been watching that we thought people might be interested in. Again, Japanese, because that's what we do. We watch Japanese television. Well,
Dan is being a little ironic here.
Why?
We actually, oddly enough, are not that Asian-centric.
Well, it is Zeke's birthday this week, so I think...
Right, but that's the beauty of it. We weren't naturally drawn to, what's it called, Giri Haji?
Yeah.
Or Midnight Diner.
Well, yes.
We lucked into them and...
I found them.
Engaged.
Yes.
We're obsessed.
Well,
it just shows you don't know what you like.
Well, we mentioned Giri Haji last week, which is a great suspense thriller. Midnight Diner is not that. Midnight Diner is this kind of quirky 20 to 25 minute show, which takes place in a diner that's open from midnight to 7 every day. And the guy who runs a diner, who's a very solid citizen, and, it's the kind of like a bartender type. He seems like a very reputable guy.
Well, he's wonderful. But it tells little vignettes, little stories.
Stories of the people who come into the diner.
Right. And there are some, regulars.
Right.
But the stories are usually completely unrelated.
Right.
Okay?
It's amazing.
Some new subject will
The variety of people come to this diner are amazing. And the story, there are some regulars, but they're like the Greek chorus. They sit on the side of the diner and they react to whatever the new people have to say or have to deal with.
Right.
And the stories are varied. Some are sort of heartwarming little stories of romance. Some are kind of a little bit the opposite. I don't know exactly how to describe them, but which is a part of what's good about Midnight Diner. It's not entirely predictable. It's got a nice tone to it. The diner seems real. The food seems appealing. They make a point of giving you a recipe every week. We watch them prepare
That's true.
something in a wok, and you say to yourself, we should have that for dinner tomorrow night, So it appeals on various levels. It's, can we call it a short bite? But I think it's fun. It's a nice thing to watch in the evening. Midnight Diner.
Yeah, it's not hilarious or anything. It's,
no.
Like you said, sometimes it's heartwarming. How do you like subtitles?
I think the subtitles are fine. My Japanese is so rusty that I find myself relying on the subtitles. How about you?
Well, the thing is with me and subtitles is I forget I'm even reading subtitles.
Well,
and so by the end of it, I just assume I am now understanding Japanese.
I didn't say this. I'm always saying, can you turn up the volume a little bit? I'm not, I don't think I'm quite getting it. It's the same idea. But the one thing I would mention about Midnight Diner is even if you find an episode that doesn't appeal to you, watch the next one. Because they're not all that same. They're not that predictable. And that's what makes it appealing in some respects.
And I think you just have to kind of relax and go with the flow.
Right.
And because it is a different format.
It's midnight in Tokyo.
Yeah. And there's just a whole... It is a wonderful change of atmosphere and context.
And it's nice to step out of your world for a while and have something completely different, even if it's wacky. So we saw another movie this week, which I'll just say something about, and I'll give you your chance because I know it didn't appeal to you as much as to me. And that was Passion Fish, which is a movie that was made in 1992, starring Mary McDonnell, who a lot of people know from Battlestar Galactica. And Alfre Woodard was in a zillion things, including St. Elsewhere, going way back. And David Strathairn, who you'll remember, Tamsen, from Good Night and Good Luck, in which he played Edwin R. Murrow. Quite a different part than what he has here. Nice cast, but also significantly directed by John Sayles. It's a John Sayles movie, and John Sayles was sort of a counterculture director in the 80s and 90s, starting with the Return of the Secaucus 7 and Manawan and Lone Star and movies like that. And it was a small miracle that he ever got his movies made. He would do better in these times because it's easier to have a smaller movie that's just digital and just goes to the Montgomery Theater or something. But he managed to get his films made, and they're kind of languorous, they're slower paced. I found the characters very affecting. It's not a completely novel story, but it does it's a very quiet story that in which they investigate the situation of a woman who's now bound to a wheelchair. She develops a relationship with the woman who's her nurse, who's going to help her, and in fact with the community around her, which she had a difficult time relating to, certainly before she got hurt. So that may sound a little stock, and I think that's the way it struck you.
Where do you get these things?
This movie?
I mean, seriously, how did you?
Roger Ebert thought this was one of the top 10 movies of the year in 1992.
And why did you choose 1992?
No, I just read what he said about it. I will also tell you, you'll be curious.
Well, how did you come up with
Mary
it?
McDonnell was nominated.
How did you come up
Mary
with
McDonnell was nominated for Best Actress.
How did you
in the
come
Academy
up with
Awards? Roger Ebert. I trust. Robert Ebert's passed away. I feel funny mentioning his name, but there's a site that collects his various reviews, and there are people who review in his tradition, and I like Roger Ebert's taste.
So you look up for like a list of his best
I
stuff?
do all kinds of things. I can't give it away here in front of all these people.
Yeah,
but
I thought it was boring.
Uh-huh.
And I did not... What was there about the main character that was engaging at all? You have to at least be interested
It's the relations.
in
her. Look.
She's just sitting there drinking and watching TV.
Yeah, well, but you had to... Look, in fairness, Tamsen, you were a little tired, so I don't think you were up for that movie.
No, that's not fair.
No?
That's not fair at all.
No?
Okay.
You think you gave the movie a fair shot?
Yes,
okay.
I do.
All right.
Why did I fall asleep during the movie? Because it was boring.
All right.
Okay?
Right.
This is the thing, Dan.
Yeah.
You should at least allow for people to have differing opinions.
I certainly do.
Okay?
You're allowed.
You can't just say, you didn't like the movie, so you're wrong.
I didn't say that. I didn't say that.
That's what you said.
No.
That's what you didn't give it a fair shot. I gave it a fair shot. It wasn't interesting to me. It seemed like kind of a
all right.
fancified Hallmark movie. Mm-hmm. And,
all right.
It was all very
What can
nice.
I say? I like John Sayles.
Do you remember? That's the thing.
Do you remember?
See, this is the thing.
Yeah.
You saying to yourself, this is a John Sayles movie, so it's good.
Yeah.
And that's your frame of mind,
yeah.
and you're going to like it.
Well, he didn't make many movies.
You know what? Can I say my mother hasn't painted many paintings? That doesn't mean that she's going to be a great painter.
Do you remember
seeing? Only 3.
Do you remember the John Sayles movie we saw years ago?
No.
I think we only okay. Lone Star. In case you're wondering.
Don't put me on the spot or anything.
I thought you might remember.
Look, I think you were prejudiced in favor of this movie.
All right.
And didn't see it with clear eyes.
We had technical difficulties.
If I came to you and said, the girls in the book club think this is a swell movie, and turned it on, you wouldn't have given it 5 minutes.
I don't know.
I
don't know. But we had technical difficulties too. We should mention that, and that may have interfered with enjoyment of it. So we have split opinions on that.
Technical difficulties.
As Gene Siskel and Roger Ebert often had split opinions on things, so it's perfectly allowable.
Yes, so embrace that.
I'm embracing.
Stop criticizing my taste.
I'm not criticizing it. I didn't say anything like that.
That's exactly what you said. That's what you're thinking.
That's what I'm thinking.
You just didn't get it.
It's always the problem.
I got it. I don't want it.
My problem is I'm too transparent. You know what I'm thinking. That's what it is. Okay. So the Kentucky Derby is the first Saturday in May.
Kentucky Derby.
And the first Saturday in May was yesterday, May 2nd.
What are we going to do with all the
there was no
mint?
Well, but there's an easy thing to do, Tamsen. Let's think about last year's Kentucky Derby. What do you remember about that?
0.
Okay, so let me bring back your memory on that because there's been some interesting developments. That was the Kentucky Derby race.
First of all, was it live or virtual?
It was live.
Ooh, those were the days.
The horse that won that race, at least so it seemed at the time, was a horse called Maximum Security, who finished first.
Did we have any money on it?
No. But in any event, Maximum...
Had you picked it?
I might have. I tend to pick these things. So Maximum Security came in first, right?
That's not what I've heard. Usually you pick the loser.
Tamsen.
Back me up here, Armand.
My point is Maximum Security finished first, and then all hell broke loose because a foul was claimed by a couple of horses that Maximum Security had sort of clipped as he went down the home stretch.
Oh, I remember that.
And then there was this awkward period in which they challenged it. And the question was whether Maximum Security would be placed down, disqualified, if you will. And everyone said, well, that will never happen. It's the Kentucky Derby. You don't do that in this kind of race. It doesn't look like such a horrible foul. And we watched it 1,000 times. You'll recall it was a muddy track, trouble controlling the horse, et cetera, et cetera. Long story short, he was taken down. He was disqualified.
Yeah.
And the horses that he bothered actually moved back in the pack. So the horse that was declared the winner was the horse that was really like middling sort of fourth when all this was going on. But he didn't get involved in any of this scrum, and then he crossed the line as a horse named Country House, who was 65-1, the longest of long shots, who wasn't even in the first group when all this was going on. He was declared the winner. Country House became the winner of the Kentucky Derby, and people went nuts, right? Mm-hmm. So what happened since? What happened since was highly controversial. Maximum Security, the owner was mad. The trainer was mad. The trainer was a guy named Jason Service, who people even said at the time, are they taking something away from Service? You may even remember he was interviewed in real time, saying and looking just a little tense about whether he would be taken down. And he seemed like a likable guy. And people observed he was kind of unpopular. He's kind of a disliked trainer. And sure enough, they took him down. The owner of Maximum Security sued Kentucky to try to get it reversed. And of course, that failed. So Maximum Security doesn't run in the other Triple Crown races, but runs in other races for 3-year-olds following the Triple Crown. And he wins. And he wins several races, including the Florida Derby, the Haskell. These are big races, the Cigar Mile. And at the end of the year, he is voted in what's called the Eclipse Awards, which are the Academy Awards for horses, if you will, the top 3-year-old in the country, notwithstanding that he was disqualified at the Kentucky Derby. All right? So you say, wow, he redeemed himself. Everything's cool. The trainer's redeemed, etc. Not exactly. He continues to race. And in March 2020, well, I should say first, in February 2020, he runs a race in Saudi Arabia, in Riyadh, and he wins a very big race there. And then a few weeks later, they announce that the trainer, Jason Service, is being accused in court of using illegal doping on his horses. All right? And there's evidence that he's illegally doped Maximum Security. Right? Now, these are huge allegations in the racing industry. So what happens now? What happens now is there's a movement about possibly taking away the Eclipse Award. They're holding up the purse in the Saudi race to see what they're going to say about this. And Jason Service might be going to jail, and they've taken the horse and put it to a new trainer. So that horse may be out of business. That whole operation may be out of business. And maybe he was on illegal drugs when he ran that derby, disputed derby to begin with. So that's totally.
So now you don't feel so bad.
Maybe. But so you say, well, how did Country House do? Country House was the winner. He was 65-1. What happened to them? Well, he was fine for a couple of days after he won the derby. Then
then he started taking drugs.
He should have. He developed a cough and whatever. And they said, we're not going to run him in the Preakness. And then he developed sort of a sore foot. And they said, we're not going to run him in the Beaumont. And then he developed something else. It turns out he didn't run in any other Triple Crown race, Country House. Mm-hmm. He didn't run in any other race ever. And he didn't run any training runs because of one malady after another. And a few weeks ago, they retired him. He never ran a single thing after the Kentucky Derby that he was declared the winner on. And he is now, in the words of Marnie McGee, reporter for the Daily Racing Form, history will surely judge him as one of the worst Derby winners ever. He was unqualified going in, and he's unqualified going out. So there you go. It's a complete mess.
It's a complete mess.
And this would have been all displayed to the public if we had a Derby this year, but it wasn't, so I was happy to catch you up on that.
Yeah, so glad you did.
Yeah. All right. And Yeah, just to go on to something else. I'll change the subject.
More?
No, I was going to say something about basketball.
How did the guy who came in third do? Making billions as a
The Last Dance.
Or something?
Talk about programs you're not interested in. The Last Dance, which is the show about the Chicago Bulls, Michael Jordan, the Chicago Bulls, which everyone in the country is watching except Tamsen and Granger, and Ken Burns. Ken Burns, the great documentary maker, including of a baseball series and jazz series and all kinds of things for Channel 13, Civil War, yes. Right? He has come out very much against The Last Dance. He says it's doesn't have the integrity that it ought to have as a documentary because it involves the participation, if not the consent, of Michael Jordan, and therefore it's sullied by possible prejudice. It's a slightly slanted view, which open to being manipulated by the guys the subject of the documentary. That's not the way history should be properly described. Right. And the short answer is, this is not history, it's just basketball. It's fun to see Michael Jordan talk. Even if we say he's making stuff up, he's kidding around, he's making light, he's selling us on something, he's kind of winking us what he's talking. That's called, you know what that's called? That's called television. It's television.
But here's the weird thing. Yeah. I mean, you watch it now, and you watch it from a certain informed position. Right. Because you're familiar with his whole career. Right. And all of the context. When some kid watches it 30 years from now, right? Aren't they going to have an entirely different?
Maybe. Do you think anyone's going to watch this 30 years from now?
I don't know. They might. Somebody might watch. You're doing a report on Michael Jordan, something. And you look at
when it comes to Michael
documentary, and you don't know he's winking. You know he's winking.
But something. You
know his tongue is in his cheek when he says this or that.
It's not what he says. It's what he did. And the thing that's most compelling in that show are the clips of him actually playing. And that's the thing people are going to look at 30 years from now. And the camera doesn't lie. So there you go.
So why do you think Burns speaks up?
Because it's not his.
There's one subject.
It's professional jealousy.
You didn't get into?
As Granger said earlier, it's easy to make the stuff about the Civil War and say, I didn't let the people involved in the event pressure me at all in terms of putting this on. Because they've been dead for 100 years. So he's a little holier than thou on this subject. Okay. All right. So what's selling and what's not selling in the pandemic, Tamsen? That's what you need to know.
Oh, well, that's kind of interesting because that's been, shopping is kind of a difficult thing.
It's off the hook, to coin a phrase.
So in some places going up, some places going down. And so let's see. What do we have here? People have stopped buying clothes.
Yeah, well, okay, but they have them. You make it sound like they're walking around naked. They have them in the closet.
No. No. People have nowhere to go, so you don't need any new clothes.
Yeah.
So you're not shopping around. Listen, you don't have to keep up with any fashions because no one's seeing I'm
getting emails from Nordstrom, 60% off, whatever. Yeah. Not interested. Not in the mood.
Okay. But what people are buying, they're not buying going out clothes, but they're buying staying at home clothes. Yeah. Sweatshirts. Pajamas, things like that. All spending has gone down. Even spending on sweatshirts and pajamas has gone down, but not as much as on evening gowns or whatever. There's no Met Gala this year, so you don't have to get dressed up on Monday night. Right. Don't worry about that. So there you have that. Of course, there's been sharp declines in hotel stays, right? But there have been increases in general merchandise stores. Okay. Yeah. So, where you need miscellaneous things.
Like Target?
I guess so. I don't know. Gun and ammunition shops.
Yeah, well, I've heard that. Yeah.
And marijuana suppliers.
Well, that's a good development.
So people are buying that stuff.
That's a positive thing.
Grocery sales in stores nearly doubled.
Wow.
In the first couple weeks of March. But now the buying frenzy has kind of receded a bit. I don't truly know about that, but I guess it has. The hoarding boom, this article says, this is in the Wall Street Journal, by the way, the hoarding boom, right, faded in late March, early April. I don't see how it's possible. Because there's still no
wrong.
Paper towels or toilet paper in most of the stores around here. Yeah. But foot traffic at stores like Whole Food and Trader Joe's, they say has gone down.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, we drove by a Trader Joe's the other day, and there was a long line of people waiting.
But that's
to
because
get in.
they're restricting the number of people in the store, so it still could be going down. Yeah.
And so, as I said, to some extent, the grocery store frenzy has receded a bit too, but not as much as the bigger stores.
But there are some stores like Whole Foods where you can order something and they have for pickup, and that's not foot traffic, but it's still sales. Right?
Online sales have surged.
Yeah.
And at the same time, the in-store things fell, and then it turned all to online. So it's like 3 times what it was a year earlier in the first couple weeks of April.
Well, it would be even more because I understand a lot of stores, including Whole Foods, are not accepting new online customers.
Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of...
They could sell everything online.
Yeah. I mean, it's just amazing.
Well, that's something that could last, something. The idea of doing groceries online, they could staff up, and Amazon could distribute that in a different way.
I read that everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, we used to ask ourselves, why don't your parents just order food online?
Right.
Because they don't have good grocery stores around them, and it was a pain in the butt to get someone.
And the answer was because they're not on the internet.
Right.
Yes.
But it clearly is a great convenience.
Yeah.
And if you've got a family and everybody's working, why spend the time going to the store?
I think that's one thing
when you can just check off
that will
the Cheerios,
hang
the SpaghettiOs.
on. I think you're going to see more of that.
Yeah, so that it'll be interesting to see how what kind of things are lasting changes. But back to what else is selling because of the new necessity for the home office. Yeah, printer sales have gone up.
Right.
I don't know exactly how that follows, but
yeah, I can see it. Because you got to scan documents too. It's not just about printing documents.
But why? Yeah, but I mean, you see them online. So what exactly are you printing?
I don't know, but there's stuff that's printed.
Printing
there's stuff
letters to send to somebody. I don't know. Okay. Anyway, moving right along here. Also, space heaters. Mm-hmm. Because people have converted rooms that they don't usually use. Maybe it's in the basement or, that back, semi-insulated porch, whatever like that.
Well, then you'll see dehumidifiers and air conditioners.
In terms of alcohol,
they
say it's a 17-fold surge.
Wow.
In the week between April 9 and 15 compared with a year before.
Well, that's up with the marijuana stuff.
And there was a very big surge in orders for one particular beer, Corona beer. I get it, coronavirus,
I get
Corona
it.
Beer.
It still seems weird, but okay.
Okay. Really surged for a while. That seems to have leveled off. People are making cocktails. So liquor has gone up. Okay. Liquor used to be way below wine. It's now wine is kind of receded, and liquor's up, and also garnishes, bitters, and syrups. So people are making cocktails.
Something to do. Yeah.
Also, bread makers went in a surge, and waffle makers. I think.
Yeah.
And what else? No. What are people doing?
What?
Online gaming.
Oh yeah, okay.
Sales for online gaming have surged, just like we talked about jigsaw puzzles and board games before. So that's where the excitement is. Plus, of course, the Victory Garden. We mentioned this before. Yeah. People are now growing their own vegetables.
Well, that's good.
Well, it's good if they understand they're not going to turn into vegetables for quite a while.
Yeah, okay.
It's not instantaneous. But tomato seeds, peppers, squash, and beans seem to be the most popular. Mm-hmm. And, people are doing a lot of projects around the house. Mm-hmm. DIY. Mm. So things that you buy at the hardware store and the Home Depot have gone up. There's a guy quoted as saying, "I've never seen so many tree houses being built in my
That's
life."
what we need. We need a country.
You totally see that, right? You're trying to keep the kids amused, entertained, and get them out of the house. Well, so build them their own house.
The country needs more tree houses. Good. That's a good development.
I would have thought that modern parents wouldn't be into tree houses.
No.
Doesn't seem dangerous.
It does, but if you build it right, I'm sure it's okay. Or I don't know.
I don't know, because it's still... They
you got
can
the
still
wrong
leap
guy.
over the side.
I thought it would be dangerous if one of our kids went to a treehouse built by me. I would easily concede that. So we avoided that.
It would fall down before they could get up.
That's probably right.
Don't worry about that.
So here's a law story. We haven't had enough legal stories. So here's something. It's about Victoria's Secret too, so it's kind of a sexy law story, I suppose.
Aren't all law stories really sexy when you get down to
it? I thought you were going to say, aren't they all about Victoria's Secret when you get down to it? There's that too. Victoria's Secret was sold. It was sold in the early part of this year, February and March, to a company called Sycamore Partners for $525 million. Now, Victoria's Secret, owned by L Brands, was had problems because there was the Jeffrey Epstein stuff. There was some questionable activities associated with Victoria's Secret. Also, time had passed it by. Whatever it is, it really is not what it's...
You can buy nice underwear a lot of other places now.
Okay, so $525 million would consider sort of a bargain price considering what it was once worth.
Okay. So
Sycamore is the company that goes to buy it. And they go to buy it. They make a contract on February 20th. And what's interesting about that contract is, number one, it was a day after the stock market hit its all-time high. Everything was copacetic. Things were chugging along. And when you make a contract for a sale of a business like that, you have a clause in the contract which says no material adverse changes will have occurred between the date of the contract and the date of the closing, which is usually a few weeks later. Okay? So they're all getting ready to do the closing, and the pandemic hits.
Right.
And the company that's buying it, Sycamore, says, gee, things have really changed remarkably since we did it before. Material adverse change. We want out of the contract.
Yeah.
Here's the problem. That in negotiating the contract, the law firm that represented the seller, L Brands, stuck in a clause in the material adverse change provision that says, yes, material adverse change is an out, but material adverse change will not include a pandemic. They actually negotiated that on February 20th, and they stuck that in. Now, that's totally an unusual clause. All right.
So who stuck that in?
I'll give you the firm. It's Davis Polk. They were on the ball. As I say in the article, here's a law firm that earned its money.
They really have any idea?
They're not quoted in the article, but obviously they had an idea. No one just pulls that out of the air. February 20th, they stuck in an anti-pandemic clause.
In February 20th?
Davis Polk was. Listen, wow. I hate to praise a competitor.
Wow.
But, I mean...
They sound like some smart cookies.
Don't go crazy here. But Kirkland & Ellis, a big firm on the other side, it's not clear they pushed back on it or not. They may have said, yeah, fine, whatever you want. Or they may have argued about it. We don't know. But it ended up in the contract. I doubt they argued about it. So now, Sycamore, Kirkland & Ellis, has actually brought a lawsuit saying they should be let out of the contract, on the theory that, they're running their business in a very different way now. Well, obviously, what the judge is going to say, they're doing that because of the pandemic. You have this pandemic. I don't want to decide the case for the judge, but it seems like it's a pretty easy case. So is that weird or what? That's the lawyering award of the spring, I think, goes to Davis Polk there.
Wow, Davis Polk.
Yeah, so now looks like they'll have to go through it.
Good on you,
So
fellas.
Victoria's Secret is going to be changing hands, whether the new buyer wants them or not. All right, I told you it was an exciting law story.
I don't say it's exciting. It's just kind of an amazing...
It's remarkable.
Yeah.
Those lawyers, they're amazing.
Either, sometimes people's paranoia really pays off.
Yes.
Banned books.
Right, banned books. The banned books report.
Always a fun topic.
In Alaska, in this case.
In Alaska. So, an Alaska school board voted last week to remove 5 books. It's from an article in the New York Times, including Maya Angelou's The
Caged Bird Sings.
I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings.
Right.
The Great Gatsby,
right.
By F. Scott Fitzgerald. Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison. Catch-22 by Joseph Heller. The Things They Carried by Tim O'Brien.
Right.
And Basically, they said this is the school board, right? The district school board. They're saying that these things, these books, raise concerns about language, sexual references, and they were inappropriate because of mentions of rape, incest, racial slurs, profanity, and misogyny.
Yeah.
And so they were voting to take them out.
But they took them
out
of
the curriculum.
Of the curriculum. They took them off the reading list. Although the logic was kind of interesting to me. And it's kind of superficially appealing, but it's not right. They said, well, look, if you read one of these books out loud or passages of some of these books out loud.
Yeah, one guy stands up and says, if I read this out loud, you would, chastise me immediately. Right. Not only that, but if I read this at work out loud, they would send me over to...
for sensitivity training or worse, or you'd be fired.
Right.
Because it's totally inappropriate. And that in his mind was the test. If you can't read it out loud to a large group, then how could the kids be reading
Right.
it?
Which is so crazy, out of context,
right.
Whatever.
But that's why I said it's superficial. You can sort of see somebody saying that, even though I tend to agree it doesn't make sense.
They're still going to be in the library.
Right.
You can read them.
Right.
You can talk about them. You can write about them, but they're not on the reading list. Not everybody was for this. The board's clerk actually objected and said, I kind of notice that today's kids don't have much, really lack critical thinking.
Yeah.
If you're not going to give them anything worthy of discussion, how are they going to ever form any skills in that area?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But anyway, they passed this. The American Library is upset and everything. But what really
what happened?
The gist,
the rest of the story. Well, what happened was that they, somebody first of all started some program encouraging the kids to read these books. But even beyond that, the books remained available for anybody who wanted to buy them. And guess what happened at the local bookstore?
They are sold out with hundreds of orders for more.
As soon as you ban a book, it becomes highly desirable and it goes to the top of the list.
It's like it's 1957, isn't it?
But that used to happen. That happened in the late 1800s. Henry Miller books.
Right.
It's crazy. D.H. Lawrence books. As soon as you banned them, James Joyce. As soon as those books were banned, sold out. That's the clearest way to sell something out.
Or even the 1900s.
Yeah. What did I say?
1800s.
Well, late 1800s. But in any event, yeah. My point is that gets people going. There is no better way to sell something than say it's banned.
So, again, good on you, Alaska.
Right on top of things.
Getting people back to the classics, no matter if they're controversial.
That's the way to do it. We got to try that classic stage. Suddenly the stuff was banned. Banned performance. Harland Svare died. Harland Svare, I remember when I was a kid reading some book, as an 8-year-old about the NFL. They used to have information in books then, as opposed to newspapers or online to read about the NFL. And all the players on the Giants, and Harland Svare was a linebacker. And it's a name that sort of struck you as unique, and you would remember it. And he played next to Sam Huff, who was quite famous. And the Giants were a very successful team. Frank Gifford was on that team. And what Frank Gifford said about Harland Svare, who at 6 feet tall and 215 pounds, was small even then for a linebacker. He said Svare did not have a muscle in his body. But he possessed remarkable intensity, and he was a smart guy. So smart that after his career ended and he did a little assistant coaching, he was named the head coach of the Los Angeles Rams at the age of 31.
Wow.
And, it's funny. There's been a movement in the NFL recently with a couple of young coaches. Lane Kiffin, Sean McVay is the one that people talk about now, who was made a head coach 1 month shy of his 31st birthday. And there's a movement to younger coaches. So this guy became a coach in 1962 at the age of 31. That was the record for the youngest coach, and it stood for, let me do some math, 55 seasons or something like that. Mm-hmm. Except he was terribly unsuccessful as a young coach. And he freely admitted.
That's why it stood for 55 seasons. Everybody said,
I didn't think about that.
We don't want to make the Harland Svare.
So when he was older, he was asked about, he got several jobs and he always failed. His teams never won games. And here's how he explained it. He said, I know I was old enough at 31 to handle the football problems, but I also know that I didn't handle people well. I was immature. I was inconsistent. Nobody likes to be criticized, but unless their faults are pointed out to them every time, football players just don't develop. Asked how he should have behaved, he said, quote, "I'd be a tough guy with a warm heart." So there you go. For all of you who become football coaches, that's the way to do it.
From a guy who didn't succeed.
Yes. Well, he figured it out later. Gene Deitch died at the age of 95, and he was an animator. As a cartoonist first, but an animator, and that's where I think he made most of his money. He was able to adapt his style to anyone else's style. So he, for example, animated Mr. Magoo cartoons, even though it wasn't the way he really drew. He could do Mr. Magoo, and he worked on those. And he's known for Tom and Jerry. What struck me about this obituary is a couple of things. One is that he moved from Los Angeles, where he grew up, to Prague. He ended up doing most of his work for the last 20 or so years of his life.
Maybe he was a beer drinker.
No, what it is was he said...
Beer is very cheap there.
Yes, what he said, that where else can you come out of a studio, make a cup of coffee at your own stove, and look out at an old tower where a real alchemist used to work at turning base metals into gold. The truth is, he met a woman in Prague who became his second wife. That's the real truth. But what also struck me about this was that he was the guy who animated the Peel's beer commercials in the 1960s. Those were two cartoon characters named Harry and Phil, who were voiced by two real characters called Bob and Ray. And I remember watching those as a kid. They were pretty funny commercials. They were offbeat. And as he says here, the commercials were great and the beer was terrible, which is something to that. But
were they based on the Bob and Ray characters?
They sounded, they didn't look like the Bob and Ray characters.
No, but I mean that same kind of
it was the same
humor.
kind of banter. The same kind of banter, same kind of stuff, but they didn't use Bob and Ray. And I remember as a kid, one day I said, there are these two guys. These Harry and Phil, they sound a lot, they look alike, they act like Bob and Ray, but they're called Harry and Phil. As an 8-year-old, this was a great mystery to me. It was.
So confusing.
But we're both huge Bob and Ray fans. So, and that's Bob Elliott and Ray Goulding. And what I tried to find was some clip to play of Bob and Ray that we could add. And you can't, because it's like behavioral humor. It doesn't work in 2 minutes. It doesn't work in 3 minutes. There are these odd situations, these two guys being fanciful characters, and it just kind of gets to you or trickles through over 7 or 8 or 9 minutes. There's no way to do it. It's sort of subtle behavior.
I don't even think it's that.
What is it?
I think it's over time. I'm not sure they're terribly funny the first time you hear them.
Well, that could be true,
too. And you just sort of, get into the character.
Yeah. But they're fantastic, and it's just, they're not one-liners. And finally, I know you're interested in this because there's no baseball. So
this is you know what? Here's an interesting thing.
Yeah.
Mother's Day is coming up.
Oh yeah, Mother's Day.
But today seems like Father's Day because you've got to talk about horse racing.
Yeah.
You had a legal story.
Basketball.
You had football story, basketball, and now the Mets.
The Mets, because people miss the Mets. Well, look, one thing that occurred to me, I said to myself, you could relive the last year's baseball season. I wonder if you can just put into the internet. This is what I did. May 1st, 2019 Mets. And guess what? It works. You get the box score of what they did that day, the whole story of the game.
You know what? I'm going to go do that right after I stick a needle in my eye. The next thing I'm going to do.
You say that, but here
start replaying old Mets games.
So sure enough, I did that. And what happened on May 1st, 2019? The Mets played the Cincinnati Reds. And it's a perfect encapsulation
number one
of the Mets season. What?
Number one.
What?
Your son turned 30.
Yeah, okay. We're talking baseball, honey. Baseball, all right? So the Mets played a game against the Cincinnati Reds. Jake DeGrom pitched for the Mets. And at that point in the season, I'm going to remind you.
Are you going to do play-by-play?
You probably don't remember this. He was having a very unsuccessful beginning of the season. He was 0-3 with a 10.0 ERA.
Is this because he had cut his hair?
And no, it's not because he cut his hair. But in any event, and he was going out in a very uncertain time, and he pitched 7 scoreless innings for the Mets. And what happened was they lost in the 9th inning because Edwin Diaz, the high-priced reliever they had brought in by trade that they were so excited about, gave up a game-winning home run in the 9th inning.
Oh.
as he had done just 2 days before. He did the same thing. And Mickey Callaway was quoted at the time saying, it's rare. I'm sure it's going to continue to be rare, but it's stunning. Well, as we all know, 2020 hindsight, turned out not to be that rare.
You mean Diaz blowing the save?
Exactly.
Okay.
I mean, whether it continued to be stunning, I don't know. But I'll tell you this, Mickey Callaway got fired at the end of the year. And it was because it wasn't that rare. Edwin Diaz kept blowing game after game after game. I think the quote of the game was DeGrom, who had pitched poorly, and on his good outing said, it's definitely a relief. No one wants to go out there and stink. And unfortunately, it wasn't Diaz who said that, because he actually stunk the whole season. So, very interesting going back to May 1st, 2019 in the Mets.
Fascinating.
A preview of things to come. All right. Happy birthday again to Zeke. And we're going to start enjoying spring.
Yeah. So this is Tamsen Granger.
And Dan Abuhoff.
With Tamsen and Dan read the paper. We'll be back again.
See ya.